Namaskar. India and New Zealand have finalized a landmark free trade agreement, an FTA that eliminates tariffs on all Indian exports, opens New Zealand's services market widely to Indian firms and creates new pathways for investment, talent mobility and agricultural cooperation as well. For business leaders in both countries, this FTA unlocks opportunities in manufacturing, services, agriculture, education, healthcare and technology. Over the next half hour, we'll break down the key points of the FTA and how it is win-win. It's a win-win agreement to boost two-way trade and investment between the two countries. So here's our report on the India-New Zealand FTA concluded on the 22nd of December 2025. It's expected to come into force or into effect by July or August of 2026 once both countries complete the required legal and ratification processes.
In a significant economic and strategic advancement for India's engagement in the Indo-Pacific region, India and New Zealand have successfully concluded a comprehensive, balanced and forward-looking free trade agreement. This milestone reflects the visionary leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and aligns seamlessly with India's ambitious goal of achieving Viksit Bharat by 2047. Prime Minister Narendra Modi engaged in a productive telephone conversation with New Zealand Prime Minister Christopher Luxon, during which the two leaders jointly declared the successful conclusion of the India-New Zealand FTA. The agreement stands as one of India's swiftest FTAs with a developed nation. Prime Minister Modi commended the conclusion of the FTA in a record time of 9 months, emphasizing that the FTA will profoundly strengthen bilateral economic ties, expand market access, foster investment flows, enhance strategic collaboration and create transformative opportunities for innovators, entrepreneurs, farmers, MSMEs, students and youth across diverse sectors. At a subsequent press conference, India's Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal highlighted the agreement's people-centric focus, noting New Zealand's commitment to facilitate $20 billion in foreign direct investment into India over the next 15 years.
This $20 billion we must see in the context of the size of the New Zealand economy. So far, in the last 25 years, New Zealand has only invested $70 million. So they are committing to invest now 1,80,000 crores.
This investment will target key areas such as manufacturing, infrastructure, services, innovation and job creation, while transforming bilateral relations from friendly to formidable in trade and innovation.
This is the 7th free trade agreement. All of them with developed economies with significantly larger per capita incomes than India, demonstrating that we are expanding trade relations rapidly with countries who complement the Indian economy.
The India-New Zealand FTA establishes a high-quality economic partnership, marking a significant milestone in the bilateral ties of both nations. Upon entry into force, the agreement will ensure zero duty on 100% of India's exports, with tariff elimination across all tariff lines. The FTA creates new opportunities for India's services sector, spanning IT and ITES, finance, education, tourism, construction, and other areas. In addition, enhanced mobility provisions for skilled Indian professionals will enable Indian talent to access better global opportunities. It will benefit farmers, MSMEs, workers, artisans, women-led enterprises, and youth, while providing immense opportunities for labor-intensive sectors. Prominent industry leaders and business stakeholders in India have enthusiastically welcomed the FTA.
This will create a new innovation ecosystem and manufacturing capabilities in India, as New Zealand has some technologies which they'll be bringing to India. At the same time, we are also very sure that with this FTA, the bilateral trade and new business opportunities, new market opportunities will be there for our small businesses as well as for whole industry.
New Zealand is a very important player in the Indo-Pacific, especially for India. Both countries can work together and achieve very good results for the benefit of both countries.
As India's third FTA concluded in 2025, following pacts with the United Kingdom and Oman, this new generation partnership marks a pivotal stride towards building a globally competitive, inclusive and resilient economy, fully embodying the vision of Viksit Bharat 2047. Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, our guests on the program are Anil Padmanabhan, Senior Business Journalist and Editor, and Professor Rakesh Mohan Joshi, Vice Chancellor of the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade. Let's first focus on the India-New Zealand FTA. Mr. Padmanabhan, what are the most immediate sectors where Indian businessmen or businesses can actually benefit from the India-New Zealand FTA, and how should we position ourselves here?
Mark, one very obvious sector is textiles. Textiles, India is hurting after this 50% tariffs that the United States imposed. So India should definitely immediately look at that sector. But like you said in your introduction, it'll be a year from now when it is actually productionized. At a larger level, it also reflects a level of self-confidence, growing self-confidence in India when they're approaching global trade negotiations. In the past, there was a tendency to approach it like a zero-sum game. Now, India is willing to give and take, and the 7 agreements that they have signed in the last 5 years signal that intent. So, all in all, like you said, it's a win-win, and the underlying investment intent is also very, very significant.
Indeed, we'll talk about that. Professor Rakesh Mohan Joshi, how will, tariff-free access for Indian exports sort of reshape competitive landscape in New Zealand, especially as Mr. Padmanabhan is talking about in textiles. Also, there's pharmaceuticals, engineering goods, all this.
It will certainly benefit India by terms of the ease. But if you see that, New Zealand is already having, low tariff on the Indian product. Bed and linen almost 1% or so, motor vehicles is almost 7%. Gems and jewelry 3%. But what has happened is, our labor intensive sector, which is the apparel, textile, leather, have been, even the marine products have been, affected by the tariff war imposed by Donald Trump and America, which account for 19% of our export share, got badly affected. And this would, indeed, pave way for duty-free entry of 100% of the goods, immediately after, the agreement is enforced, maybe by July or August or so. And then we also have got tariff elimination on 8,284 lines, and which expand market access for all our product. Our new growth avenues across IT and ITS sector, especially the finance, education, tourism, and audiovisual services we are getting. We are likely to get under this FTA the unprecedented mobility and opportunities for the Indian professionals and the student. And most importantly, our global supply chain and our value chain with the New Zealand and with other countries is likely to be competitive with the global supply chain by way of the MFN treatment. And this is also likely to benefit, the small farmers, MSMEs, workers, artisans, and women in supporting the inclusive growth. Now, if you see that New Zealand would really remove or cut tariffs on 95% of the exports, and this would provide 100% duty free to all our products. Most importantly, we could protect our sectors, some of the agriculture sectors and the dairy sectors like the milk, cheese and the yogurt. But at the same time, we are likely to have the technology transfer in terms of the agriculture, food processing, dairy processing, And most importantly, like, the ETF agreement which we signed in Europe, we are also likely to get $20 billion of the investment, from
Right.
New Zealand, from a
So,
small country
true.
over the next 15 years.
So both of you have mentioned the $20 billion over the next 15 years. But Mr. Padmanabhan, if we look at, the fact that our products are becoming more price competitive, does it challenge supply from China, for instance? Does it challenge supply from Australia into the New Zealand market?
Not at the moment, Mark, but eventually presume that India will improve its competitiveness, because the implicit message in these 7 FTA deals that India has struck is that it is committed to improving the competitiveness of domestic goods, both for domestic consumption and for exports. So Indian goods have suffered for lack of competitiveness.
Right.
So clearly the government is betting that Indian exporters will take up the gauntlet and compete internationally. So maybe in the long run they would challenge, but not in the short run.
So, Mr. Padmanabhan, also with talent mobility, that's a key feature of this FTA. What impact will this have on, India's skilled workforce and also New Zealand's labour market?
See, Mark, it's a very interesting point you raised. If you step back a little, we used to maybe 2 decades ago debate the idea of brain drain. Now, India is offering its personnel to the rest of the world. So it's realized that it is not a one-way street, because a lot of these are skilled personnel also come back to India or are becoming bridges between countries, particularly for access to technology, etc. So a movement of personnel, free movement of personnel is extremely good, is welcome move, because it's good news for India's skilled workers, and also in the technology transfers. So as far as the New Zealand workforce goes, yes, there will be an impact, there will be some level of impact, but not at the high-end skills. So it is give and take. I presume they have done their homework on their side, just like we have done our homework on our side.
Indeed. Professor Joshi, you were mentioning agricultural products. Now, agricultural cooperation is there in apples, kiwi fruit, honey. How can, Indian agri-tech companies and farmers also leverage this partnership and also remain protected at the same time?
It's very important, because if you see, the New Zealand agriculture and dairying is very, very competitive, and therefore very, very competitive. Their productivity is very, very competitive, and therefore one of the major exports that they do is of the apples, the kiwi fruits, and dairy product. Incidentally, New Zealand produces 1/7, 1/8 of the total milk that India produces, but it is the largest exporter of dairy product in the world, accounting for 25-27% of their share. And therefore, the technology transfer, the FDI which we are going to get, and their commitment to especially the technology transfer and improving India's technology with the investment of, which we have talked about, $20 billion of investment is going to improve our technology. And, the FTA itself is going to create an ecosystem wherein the Indian and New Zealand firms would be able to work together. And I think it's very clear that they have also done their homework. India has also done their homework. It will provide job opportunities not only in India but in New Zealand also, and make help to make our product and especially the food processing competitive, in which New Zealand has really has got an edge over that. So I think again it should not be looked at from the merchandise point of view, but we need to look in long-term technology transfer and making Indian agriculture, Indian processing, Indian food processing, Indian dairy processing as a competitive. And more so, it is the work visa should not be taken that it gives job to Indians there, but it should not be seen as the technology transfer and integration of the technology between the two countries, which will help India to become an integral part of the global supply chain, become an integral part of the food and the dairy supply chain, in which they have got, there are certain things in which India has got a lot of aid in terms
Right.
of the people, in terms of their competence, in terms of the quantity of the milk production, but and quantity of even the food production, quantity of the agriculture produce, horticulture produce. But I think in case there is an integrity in this, which I think the agreement has laid out, and I'm
Yes.
sure the coming days will pave
Sure.
way for increased integration and make Indian agriculture, processing, and then exports competitive.
So, Mr. Padmanabhan, what safeguards do you think would exist in the FTA to protect sensitive Indian sectors like dairy and edible oils and all that? And also this investment of $20 billion, in which sectors, I mean, would New Zealand be interested in investing in over the next 15 years?
Mark, like Mr. Joshi said, they would be very keen to obviously invest in the dairy sector because it'll complement
Right.
their own industry. And we don't know the nitty-gritty of the deal because we'll know more details only as both sides productionize the agreement. So as of now, we only know the broad strokes of what was signed. And I would just use this opportunity to also explain to your viewers that, Mark, India is now also signaling the new geometry of world trade.
Okay.
See, it is traditionally India was locked into a few markets. Now, what it is doing, this with the seventh FTA deal that it has struck, it is creating a new web for Indian trade. And please, this FTA is a misnomer. It includes investment, which means that it is now linked to job creation in both countries. It's not
Okay.
just in one country. So it is a very holistic way of looking at development. It is not pure merchandise trade, as Mr. Joshi also pointed out. I think for your viewers, they should understand that an FTA agreement is far wider than just a pure trade agreement.
In fact, let's widen the scope of our discussion as well through that. Your answer has given us the right segue for that. Professor Joshi, India has signed FTAs with UK, EFTA, Oman, and now New Zealand this year. So what strategy is driving this expansion of trade agreements?
I think it's a very new and path-breaking wherein now we are signing FTA with the countries wherein we have got complementarity rather than competitiveness. It's probably the first time in the recent years that India is signing FTA with the developed countries, and therefore it is probably the first time wherein the FTAs are becoming more inclusive, more holistic rather than only merchandise trade. If you see, even in case of New Zealand, we have got almost 1.2 $1.3 billion of the merchandise trade in the last financial year. But what happens is almost over $1 billion we also have got the services trade. So it is services trade, and more importantly, unless we signed EFTA, India never or no country had investment related to an FTA. So theoretically you call it FTA, but FTA is free trade agreement. Free trade agreement theoretically is removing the tariff barrier, which is the import duty between the countries. But it is much more than that because it includes the services, it includes the investment, and I think more so it includes the visa, the natural people traveling to both countries, and more so. Again, as let's see the details of these agreement, which I think we need to go. And at the same time, India could protect its agriculture, and we could protect our dairy, and understanding the nuances and the sensitivities of both the countries. If you could not have struck a deal, but India, by signing the deal with the alternative markets, we have demonstrated that. India is, US is very important for us, but without that, I think India will not only survive, but we will thrive. Only problem, I think, the India, which was a strategic issue, which I think the whole world is facing, is if 19-20% of our, export was with United States of America, and similarly, our import dependence is on China. So I think diversifying the market is the best strategy for mitigating the risk in the international environment and today's environment of the distrust, and something which is going to be very certain in time to come in the global geopolitical environment is uncertainty. I think it's a very unpredictability. We do not know what we are going to do, and therefore, it looks small. But I think it's very important. India signing an FTA in the Oceania, both with New Zealand and Australia. It's going to be
Sure.
win-win strategy for both. And if you look in a strategic perspective, these are the countries which are very important for us geographically. Strategically, UAE is very important, and UAE in the
Yes,
Middle
yes.
East and Oman in the Middle East. I think it's highly commendable.
Indeed, but Mr. Padmanabhan, in terms of opportunity cost, then we'll have to look at some markets, not all markets. So we have to see that. I mean, for Indian SMEs, for instance, which do you think of these FTAs? UK, FTA, Oman, or New Zealand offers the greatest opportunities?
On paper, Mark, all of them offer opportunities. It's a question about how well you compete in those markets. So Indian MSMEs struggle primarily for credit and technology, though I won't universalize that. There are parts of MSMEs which are doing extremely well. So it will be a learning process. It's not going to be easy. It will take time. Do not expect an instant makeover of Indian MSME exports to the rest of the world. But it's a process. It'll take time, but I'm sure the government's bet is a calculated bet, and I'm sure they've done their homework ahead of signing the slew of FTAs with MSMEs as a very key focus.
Indeed, we'll leave it there on that note. Thank you very much, Mr. Anil Padmanabhan, Senior Business Journalist and Editor, and Professor Rakesh Mohan Joshi, Vice Chancellor of the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade. Thank you for unpacking that for us and putting it into a larger context. Well, that's all we have in this program, and thank you very much for watching. Now, India's economy, as we see, is on a rapid growth path and expansion path, and it's helping to create jobs, not only in India, but as we see across the world, and is very much in keeping with the Prime Minister's vision of a Viksit Bharat by 2047. Thanks for watching. Namaskar.